welcome. It's Fly Tie and Jacinda. We're excited to be here. It's all about you today, Fly Tie.
All right, let's do this.
We want to hear your story. I have so many questions because I feel like a lot of people are always saying, Fly Tie, how did you get into this industry? And so today we're going to dive into it.
Wow, it's a crazy way I got into the industry, but I'm glad that I took the jump, took the leap, and it actually has changed my life. So let's do it.
First question, did you always know you would end up in this career? Did you listen to the radio and play cassette tapes? Were you the person that had the remote control and sang in it? Did you know?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I always knew that I loved to talk. And being in the communication field, you have to be a talker. So one of my teachers told me in middle school, you're never going to amount to anything if you keep talking like this. Well, guess what? Guess what, Miss Walsh? I worked it out. Here it is 28 years later in an industry that I absolutely love, and all from just being a talker running my mouth.
Miss Walsh is mean. She is mean.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I used to talk in her class a lot, so.
And you still talk
She
a
had
lot
a
now.
point. I would try to talk over her.
Goodness.
I was a great debater.
Fly Tie, which we're actually going to get into how you became Fly Tie and what that name even means. We're getting into that in just a few, but take us to the very start. How did this start? How did you get into this industry?
Well, it's funny that you asked that first question, Jacinda. Did I always know that I was going to, be into radio or television or even live hosting? Because there was one gentleman. I worked at a drugstore. It was like Eckerd Drugs. It was like a CVS.
Like a Rite Aid or
Walgreens, Rite Aid,
yeah.
And I would be the first one to get on the announcement saying, all right, the time now is 8:45, 15 minutes away.
Did you say it in that voice too?
I did. 15 minutes away. We'll be closing in 15 minutes. Please make your final selections and come to the front. The pharmacist came to me. He said, man, you got a great voice. You have a great voice. You ought to consider a career in radio. And I got to brush it off, but I love doing those announcements. I used to do school announcements in school.
Me too. I did as well.
And I loved it. I remember even when the teachers would call on us to read in class. Did you guys have to do that?
I loved all that stuff. Yeah.
I would love reading in class. I would always add a little extra spice on the way I read. Everybody would read a chapter of a book and then she'd call on different people. And I just loved it. I embraced it. And it helped me develop a muscle in my younger years that I did not know would actually become a career.
Okay, so the start. What did that start like that first time?
Well, it's very unorthodox for me.
Okay.
I never thought I would have a career in radio because I'm a barber by trade. I didn't go to the traditional college, the 4-year university, and you study communication like a lot of people do.
Hold on.
Master in communication.
So hold on, because we got to say this for the people right here. Fly Tie has been in this career for almost 30 years.
Yes.
Almost 30 years.
Yes.
You didn't go to college.
Didn't even go to college. Didn't go to community college. Didn't graduate with a 4-year degree, a bachelor's or a master's. Actually, I did go to school for this. I went to the School of Hard Knocks.
You'll get the last lesson there.
I learned the hard way. Well, it really wasn't hard because I always considered it fun.
Okay. So you were a barber, and I know you started, I want to hear about this just for a moment. You started cutting hair in school.
I started cutting hair in school. I was in middle school when I started.
Middle school.
And,
what did you charge then?
Free.
Free 99.
Free 99.
Let me come and mess up your hair.
Free 99.
If you trust me.
Oh, that's really good that you asked that because that's exactly how I started in radio. Many people start off volunteering or doing something that they love absolutely free. So I started cutting hair for free, and then I went up to $3. I got really good. I think the max amount that I chose while I was cutting hair out of my basement was maybe $5. Oh, I thought I was doing it then. $5 a head. Oh, make it rain. So, yeah. But I love to talk. I love to talk to my clients. I love to talk to my friends. And again, I was working and exercising the muscle of communication that I didn't know eventually would become a career.
And just like, your brother was a barber as well, and that barbershop talk, that laughter, that camaraderie, that everything, like that's radio. That's radio. So fast forward, you and your brother then started your own business. And so now you guys have your own business as barbers. You're cutting hair, but now you're starting to cut hair for some big name people.
That's right. And the best conversations happen in the barbershop. Like if you ever really want to know what's going on, go to a barbershop, because there you can find out what's going on in the streets. You get strong, very opinionated people maybe about what's going on in the world or in sports. But the barbershop is really a community of different personalities coming together, expressing themselves. And that's what happened. So yeah, I got pretty good. Started cutting a lot of influential people hair. Great word. Who had power in our city, and then, I started cutting people that was on the radio. When different celebrities would come to town, they would bring them to our barbershop and have great conversations. So that's how it started. I began cutting all the radio personalities' hair locally in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that led to me eventually going to hang out on the radio with these guys.
Okay, but I also know, too, that there were times that you picked up the phone, dialed the number, and called in and got through.
Yes.
Like, what made you do that? How did you get through? And from you being this little old barber, you started kind of creating a name for yourself. They started looking for you to call in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so funny because I would take some of those same conversations in the barbershop. I would call into the radio station and we would do them on the radio. It was very entertaining. If you ever walked into any black barbershop, you know how entertaining some of those conversations can be. So I would call in, but here's the key. I would disguise my voice. I would disguise my voice when I would call into the radio station, so much to the point where those clients of mine that worked on the radio, they didn't even know it was me. Right. And I would take those same conversations from that we would have in the barbershop whenever they're talking about something that's happening locally in the community and talk about it on the radio. But I would add a little spice to it because I always thought I was a funny guy.
So here's where
I would add some jokes in.
Here's where you're funny. But how did you get through? Those lines be blowing up. How did you get through?
Well, I kept calling, hit the read out button back in the day. Read out. Well, eventually I got through. And when they would come back to the barbershop, I would say, hey, did you know that was me who called into the radio station? It's like, no, you gotta be kidding me. Because I would do several different characters in different voices because I didn't want them to, I tried to trick them.
Yeah.
Right? So eventually I got in, so much so to the point where they was like, look, we want you to call at 8:52 tomorrow. And they gave me what we call the hotline number.
What's the hotline number?
So now I could call at any time. It's a line that goes in directly to the studio. Yep. And they'll know someone's calling the hotline because the light flashes. It's a big flash in the studio. So I had the hotline number. Usually your boss calls that number if you said something wrong on the radio, but I had access. And that's a great thing that I want to talk about when we dive into these media classes is having access and making the most of every opportunity that you have. And that's what I did. I made the most because not only would I call every now and then and talk about things that we was passionate about, I made the most of every opportunity. I called every day.
So here you're a barber. You're having these phenomenal conversations every single day cutting hair. Then you start calling in. Then you start bypassing the busy signal and getting access straight into the studio.
Yeah.
And now they're creating bits around you,
Yep.
telling you to call in every day. Now they start inviting you to the studio.
So what happened is I was persistent, right, in calling every day. And when I got the invitation to come into the radio station, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I'm looking around. People don't have to get dressed up. They got on jeans, T-shirts.
cool.
They dress cool. This is like, oh, man, I got invited to the cool spot, right? They actually get to have fun at work, and you guys are getting paid for this? I would love to do this. I got bit by the bug.
Yep.
I got bit by the bug, and I became consistent. That's a huge word because I would go up there for free every day, and not just go up there for free. Like, I was a barber. Our barbershop opened up at 9 o'clock. I would actually wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and be at the radio station by 6 a.m. to the point where people thought I worked there, but I was volunteering because I was enjoying myself, right? And then I began to do these voices on the radio. This is back in the day where there was characters on the radio. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
But people would call in and do like maybe an old granny or maybe they would do somebody. I did a character that was in the LGBTQ community. His name was Tyrone. I would be like, hey, y'all, how y'all doing? I did a preacher. His name was Reverend Sweet Willie Brown. And I did a character called Booty Green. Hey, I'm Booty Green. You know, I would do all these different voices, and people would actually think there was different people walking in and out of the studio. The most popular one name was Tyrone. People loved him because he was just outlandish, and he became like a staple. So they created features around this character. I had a segment called "How Do You Know If You Ghetto?" I had another segment called Tyrone's Mailbag. I had another segment called On the Phone with Tyrone. I had another segment that was Horoscopes Daily, and we would do birthdays. So now they would invite these characters into these different segments, and I became part of a morning show. Now, what I did, Jacinda, was like, oh, now it's time for me to get paid, right? So I went to the afternoon jock. His name was Nate Quick, and I said, hey, I want to do what you do. So he said, get me an air check. Didn't even know what an air check was. So I said, I'll get one to you, right? I said, what is an air check? He said, it's some of your best bits on the radio, right? So I went to an actual studio, and it sounded horrible at the time, to think back at how it sounded. It was horrible, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was so green. But I went and made an air check of me pretending to be on the radio, and the guy who's producing the air check at the time, name was Donald Lawrence, who's a great gospel singer right now, which is crazy.
Wow.
He went to the studio with me, and he was like a caller calling in, and he actually recorded me in his music studio, and I turned in that tape to the music director at the time, that was Nate Quick. And he probably threw it in a pile with all the other tapes. But here's an opportunity that I was like, I can actually get paid for this. Let me put forth my best effort and do my due diligence, everything that I can to get my foot in the door. And actually, nothing ever came of that.
I was going to say, what happened? What happened?
Nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't offer me a job at all, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like them and talk on the radio, but I was like, nothing came out of it. So let me just keep coming, volunteering.
See, okay, this is rejection. This is rejection. And this happens. This happens. You don't just go and just start soaring all the time. I mean, how bad do you really want it? How bad do you want it? Waking up at 5 a.m., going and sitting around with everyone else who's getting paid a lot of money and you're not, but you're still giving your best self, your best work in hopes that one day someone will throw you a bone or something.
Yeah.
How long were you going up to the radio station? How many months or even years were you doing this?
Oh, it's probably, I probably worked free for a year.
Okay.
Right?
A long time.
And the same guy who invited me up to the radio station. Well, I was friends with all of them, the afternoon jog, Nate Quick at the time. But the morning show host by the name of VJ Murphy, who eventually became my mentor in radio, he invited me up and he actually saw a gift in me and told me what he wanted me to do, these different character voices. And he actually helped me, hone that gift. And he told me, hey, you're funny doing this, try it this way, or talk like this, do it that way. And I just kept doing it. I kept doing it. And eventually those characters became pretty popular on his morning show. And eventually that morning show went to number one.
What's that morning show?
It's called The Breakfast Brothers Morning Show. And I was on that show for 9 years in Charlotte. And eventually ended up going to a larger market, Dallas, Texas. But I was super excited when they said, hey, you've been here volunteering for a while, and we want to give you an opportunity. And I already had a career as a barber, but I wanted to take full advantage of the opportunity. And I remember saying to myself, as long as I get insurance and it pays my gym membership, I'm good. And that's exactly what it paid. I think I started off at $18,000 a year for the entire year, which is not much, but it put gas in my car. It was some extra money on the side. And then I started making more money on the side by doing these appearances. And commercials. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, you guys are actually paying me to do what I would go and pay to do, maybe go out to a night spot and make an appearance. Actually now, instead of me going out paying money to get in these places and concerts, they're actually paying me to be there. And I'm like, this is a game changer. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So you eventually got that big break where they hired you. Could care less how much they're paying you, but they're paying you and you're getting access into all of these shows and concerts and sports events. And not only are you getting in, but you're hosting them. So how many years now? You said 9 years that you got to be a part of this phenomenal experience of radio in Charlotte. What were some of your best moments?
Oh, man.
Maybe some of your biggest celebrities that you interviewed.
Oh, gosh. I mean, in Charlotte, I interview everybody from the biggest artists that the world can imagine, from Jay-Z, Beyonce to Mary J. Blige. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I don't believe that it was a celebrity or an actor that I didn't have an opportunity to interview. Everybody who I ever thought that I would talk to, we did. Because at the time, when people are doing promo for whatever they have going on, whether I have a movie going out, they have to do these radio interviews, and it's station after station after station, and they can actually do them in like one day, right? So they would say, hey, you guys have a window from 7:40 to 7:50, and we would have 10 minutes to ask them anything we wanted, unless they said, hey, don't talk about this.
Sometimes there's a list of like, don't ask, or the interview will drop.
Yeah. So not only did we do over phone interviews, but we did live interviews with people that would actually come into the studio. So I got to meet a lot of my childhood heroes and these superstar celebrities in music, in film, in television, maybe authors of books. So I was like living the dream. So I got to interview a lot of people, but what I really loved the most was being out amongst the people, the community, doing community events, because when you're in radio, you also do appearances, whether you're getting paid for them or whether it's just something that would benefit the community. And I found out that I really loved the live interaction just as much as I did being on the radio.
How does it feel going somewhere and people recognize you and be like, Fly Ty, I listen to you on the radio, or I've been listening to you for years, or I've been following you? Like, how does that feel? It's
gratifying. I mean, I believe everyone wants to be liked, right? So it's very, very gratifying to realize, to come to a point in my life or in my career that I've been people have invited me into their homes by tuning in for so many years, and they feel like they actually know you personally, right? But actually, you've never met them before in person. So, I think as a part of a person's everyday, it takes not only out of habit, but intentionality for people to tune into their favorite station to listen to their favorite jock. And I never took that for granted.
Okay, so now you're on this phenomenal morning show in Charlotte that's number one for so many years, 9 years. What happens after that in your career?
I have an opportunity. So, I went from making $18,000 a year to actually signing a 5-year contract deal. And, after working for several years and making $18,000, I was just doing it for fun. But I was like, whoa, this actually can be a career, because now they said, we want to offer you a contract. Like, a contract? They actually give these things out. I thought like athletes and superstars only get contracts. They said, no, we want to offer you a contract, and we have a signing bonus of $10,000. I'm like, whoa, that's what you guys was paying me. And we want to give you a salary of $50,000. We'll increase that $10,000 a year. I'm in my early 20s, and I look at the end of the contract, I'm making $100,000. And I'm like, whoa. Now the barbershop wasn't as important.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think this could be something here.
Which, not to mention, too, in radio, now you have appearances.
Yeah.
That's an extra fee, and you're doing appearances all the time. And
Yes.
you have commercials.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that salary is just a base. You're then doubling that with all the additional work you're doing, because you're getting off the air at 10 a.m. And when you become number one, then there's bonuses every time that you reach number one in the book, in the ratings book, which we'll talk about in the master classes.
Absolutely. So now I'm making money as a salary
left and
from
right.
being on the radio, making money from appearances, from doing what I love, meeting celebrities, hosting concerts, not just being able to go to concerts, but they want me out there with the microphone actually introducing these artists, and you're going to pay me to do that. I was like, this is something that's I can get used to.
And the most important is that you're doing what you love. Like, who gets to do what they love and then have all these beautiful extras on top of it? So now you get this really great opportunity that lands on your lap.
Really great opportunity at the end of that 5-year contract. There was an opportunity to go to a major market. Major market is like a huge city, right? That you get to, and people get paid more according to the population size of the city, okay? We'll just say that. I'll give you the top 5 cities. New York, number 1. LA, number 2. Chicago, San Francisco, and Dallas, Texas. Well, I was in a top 5 market, not only top 10 market. People work their entire careers to make it to a top 10 market. I had the opportunity to go with my mentor, BJ Murphy, to a top 5 market. Dallas, Texas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, 5.2 million people at the time in that area. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm able to go to this huge city and be on the radio with millions of people listening to me. And it gets even better.
So good.
The radio jocks that was there was not only making 6 figures, there was several making 7 figures. You mean to tell me I could become a millionaire on the radio by doing what I love? And they actually did it. So I was like, heck yeah, I'm all in. You don't even have to ask me. They presented me with a 3-year contract, and I was on the next thing smoking to Dallas, Texas, going to a number 5 market, and I was super excited.
So tell us about the radio station you were on and what you did, what your day-to-day looked like.
So I went down there, and when I went down, I had evolved from doing these characters on the radio to becoming a personality, and I wanted to get out of just being a character. I wanted to be myself. So I went from this hugely popular character in Charlotte, North Carolina, as being Tyrone, to a city where no one knows me, but I still had huge personality, and that character went by the name of Fly Ty.
Yeah.
Hence the name Fly Ty on the radio in a huge market. So went down there as a personality, but also as a producer. Producer is responsible for bringing content to talk about on the air, executing that content. Not only that, but doing promos, doing bits on the radio, produce bits on the radio, and maybe even commercials for the radio station and for your show that would air throughout the day. So scheduling interviews. So the producer is really responsible for content. So it was really, doing that, and also being a personality on the radio. So I was able to combine two of my gifts because I learned to have a passion not only for what I could do behind the mic, but what I was able to do in the production room, because when I got into this, I wanted to stay in it so bad. I wanted to learn everything from running a board. And we'll talk about what a board is in our media classes to editing, in Adobe and things like that. I wanted to learn everything, not just be on the mic and be limited to what I could do. I wanted to exercise all of my gifts, because the more I learned, I felt like the more valuable right. that I would become. And I wanted to be irreplaceable. Right. Like you're going to have to hire 3 people to do the job that I could do.
And one thing that I loved, you moved to a city, no one knew you.
Yeah.
You didn't know anyone.
Correct.
I did the same thing moving to Charlotte. I look at it as a clean slate because you get to really build your brand and become who it is you want to become.
Yeah.
How did you use that to your advantage?
Well, actually, 2 things. I used it to my advantage, and then it became a disadvantage to me. Okay. This is a funny story. So I was able to get out of the box that I was in of doing character radio, right? Doing all these different voices on the radio. And I could just be a personality. I could hugely become myself. And that was very liberating.
Yeah.
That, wow, I get to just be me. I could talk about my opinions, and I could, be really passionate about what I feel strongly about. And then it started being too much fun. Right? So in radio, it's not entertaining if everybody just gets along.
Yeah, we don't sing kumbaya and it's like, do you guys feel safe? And everyone's like, no. And you got to have some friction. There has to be arguments. Has to. You have to pick a side. I have to pick, and I have to pick the opposite. And we have to go against each other, whether we agree or believe or not, because that's how our listeners are. There's listeners that are agreeing and disagreeing with you all across. So our radio show has to display that.
That's right. That's right. I like to compare it to reality TV. Reality TV wouldn't be as entertaining if they all got along.
We say we want it to be more positive, but you really don't.
Yeah, you got to have a little drama,
really
a little friction, but that makes it entertaining. And to your point, there is somebody on the other side of that microphone that's probably feeling just like you. Everybody don't agree all the time.
Correct.
So I became that guy, meaning I became
the shock jock.
The shock jock. The person that would say anything. What comes up, comes out, right? And sometimes, majority of the time, it would be controversial. Yeah. So people's like, oh, I can't believe he said that.
I hate him.
Yeah, they would call in and be like, why is he on the radio? I don't agree with him. But they would argue, and I would love it because I would, majority of the time, win the argument. And when I felt like they started to win, I would hang up on them. And listeners would be like, oh, I can't believe that. No, he didn't say that. I can't believe it. I can't stand him. But I'm going to listen tomorrow.
Yep.
And I'm going to listen the next day because I'm wondering what he's going to say next.
I hate you so much.
I became that guy.
You're secretly my favorite, but I hate you.
Yeah. I love to hate you. Pretty much, right?
So how many years were you there?
So I did that for 2 years. Okay. I did that for 2 years. And eventually we got replaced, for lack of better terms, by a syndicated show, the Steve Harvey Morning Show, who's nationally syndicated. What happens oftentimes in radio, they'll take one jock or one celebrity and record a show from one city and put him or her on a lot of cities around the country. and that replaces the local jock. Unfortunately, after 2 years, that's what happened to our show.
Okay, then what happened next for you in your career?
Well,
Did it
after
end there?
that,
Did it just end, boom, done?
well, a lot of times when you are working in a cluster is when one radio company owns several radio stations in that city. And oftentimes they do. There's not a radio group that will own just one station. They have several.
Right.
So I was working on an R&B station, and eventually they moved me over to the hip hop station, which I was on that station for another 5 years. So actually, I was on the radio for 7 years.
What are the stations out
in
there?
Dallas,
you
Texas.
Didn't give any love to them.
Yeah, so I went down there to work on KRNB, and I eventually worked with K104, which is the number one hip hop station in Dallas, Texas, owned by a company called Service Broadcasting, and one of the best paying radio companies in
Lucky
the country.
Lucky
The
you.
competition down there was a cluster of radio stations that was owned by Radio One Group, which is a urban owned company. They own Urban One, and which is a television station, but they own 97.9 The Beat in Dallas, and also Magic in Dallas, Texas. So that was our competition. So either you're going to stay with the radio group you're with or go work for the competition. That's what usually happens.
Yeah.
So after being down there 7 years, I eventually got fired. And it was the worst thing of my career, because I was like, oh my gosh. But this is crazy. Not even a month later, my old boss in Charlotte, North Carolina, called me and said, we would love to have you back here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
We heard about what happened, and we can't pay you what you were making down there, but we would literally embrace you. And it was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life, coming back to my hometown. And so I went from being always on an ensemble, right? In Dallas, I had a weekend show by myself, but I went to have my own show. Not only was it my own show, I was the only live jock on the station, because we had
The
a
entire
syndicated
station.
morning show. The Tom Joyner morning show was in the
Yeah.
morning, and I was in the afternoon. So I was the only live jock. So the city really, really embraced me, you know, because now here it is, a local radio personality coming back home to be on the competition at the time. So they really, juiced that up.
So this is when I first got to know you, because here I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing morning radio, and I was hearing, they kept saying, welcome back, Fly Tie. I mean, you were killing the radio station. I said, who is this guy?
Who is this Fly Tie guy?
Who is this Fly Tie guy? But you were a fan favorite that everybody who's from here grew up listening to, loving, gave you a farewell. You've been gone now, and for you to come back home, and then like own this station, what was that experience like for you?
It was amazing, because I felt like it was a huge promotion in my career. So to be able to come back home to a city that you call home, and to a place where you love, and a lot of the people that worked on CBS radio at the time when I left, they had transitioned to this Radio One radio group, and I was working with old friends.
Yeah.
So it's like coming back to a city, and they truly wrapped their arms around me and just embraced me, promoted my show, and really was working hard at getting me to be number one. And that was mind-blowing. I loved it.
So how long now did you have your own show, and then what was the next transition?
Well, so at the time, I was on there for another 5 years, okay? Another 5 years, and then eventually, after being on that station for 5 years, I was presented with another contract, and I was like, I'm going to go to the competition, which actually was the radio group that I left Charlotte for. So now not only am I back home working for the competition, now I'm going to go back to the station where I first got started at. Yeah. And that was amazing. And my old boss was still there, and she persuaded me to go back over CBS Radio at the time. Well, it went through a few different owners, Infinity Broadcasting, Viacom, CBS, and now it's owned by a radio group by the name of Beasley Radio Group. And I came back. I came back and went over there. I had to sit out of radio a year because they have what they call a non-compete contract. So I sat out a year, and people didn't even realize I was out of radio because I had became a household name to the point where I was still hosting events, 2 and 3 events every week. So they couldn't actually promote me on the competition radio station, but I was promoted on social media, on flyers. I was still able to do what I love, but be able to sit down for maybe 6 months. I think
it was 6 months.
It was a 6-month non-compete.
So you came, you did more of a producer role, and you were out in the streets hosting, but your voice was not allowed to be on the air
6 months.
Because you were leaving a local radio station to go to one right up the street, and they were like, "Oh no, bro." Yes. We invested and paid a lot of money on you here under the name Flat Tire. You're not taking Flat Tire over to a competition.
When you go to the competition, you cannot work within a certain mile radius, especially in that same city.
Or you have to pay a lot of money.
After that 6 months, or the radio station that hired you could get sued. Didn't want to take that chance because I was grateful just to go to the competition, work with a young lady by Artie, the One Woman Party, when I went over there. Eventually got my own show on the radio, and then eventually moved to the morning show, producing that show, working alongside Steve Harvey, and then having my own radio show on the weekends alongside yourself. So again, I learned how to do everything, which I believe made me valuable in radio.
So now that's radio. When did TV come in?
Well, throughout my entire career of doing radio, I would do guest appearances on television, which is really cool because they want that personality of the radio jock. So I would go in and sit in for nighttime shows, or we would go and pre-record a segment for a local news station here. So start doing some cool stuff with that, and eventually start doing a weekly segment alongside you on one of the local news stations here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which, I really love having that opportunity to do that because they still allow me to have my personality, and now I'm getting paid for it. So that was a really, really cool opportunity, and did that for a couple of years. So that was fun. I got to have fun doing exactly what I did on the radio, still doing the radio in the morning, but now I was able to transition to do morning news, but still allowing me the opportunity to be a contributor.
Right.
And I wasn't doing hard news, like reading the news report. No, that's not my personality. I got to do what I did on the radio and just transition it over to television.
Yeah, WCCB actually created a segment for us. It was called Woman versus Man, where we would just have normal topics, normal discussions that every woman and man have, and we would create them. Then we would go sit on the couch in the morning and debate them. They got so big that we even did live events where people would come and we would live have these discussions and get viewers' opinions on it. So that was real good for television.
Yeah.
Now, this entire time, all of these years, you've been hosting. So you're warming up your craft of hosting different crowds, different concerts, different comedy shows, different weddings, all of that. In almost 30 years, you've hosted almost everything. I am literally saying you are the best host that I know.
Wow, thank you so much for that.
The best host that I know. Let's get into hosting now. You were working for the NBA.
So actually, what really helped me exercise the hosting muscle was being able to do interviews on the radio. Every week when I had my own radio show, I would interview comedians, right? And they would do comedy shows here in town. Well, eventually those comedians would have me to come out and open up for them, right? In front of a live audience. And, doing a comedy show and being the host of a comedy show, oftentimes the comedians may not be that funny. So now here are people who paid, a price of admission to get into this place, and they're expecting to laugh. And I'm hosting, so now they're making my job hard because they weren't funny. So you got people sitting in the audience with their arms crossed, and it's your job to bring the energy up in the room for the next comedian. I said, let me go and write some jokes. They didn't really hit at first, but just like with anything, when you start doing it over and over, you get better at it. I got better at it with radio as far as communicating and from behind the mic. And then I eventually became great at television, being on television from week to week. Now I'm in front of this comedy crowd and they want to laugh. And I started doing comedy, which really helped me not be afraid to go in front of anybody and host a live event. So eventually I got opportunities to work with some of the biggest events in Charlotte as far as concerts, as far as...
Like, who are some people you opened up for?
Oh, goodness.
At the arena, like you opened up for some big name people.
Oh, my gosh. Almost every music group you can name, from New Edition to Usher to Puff Daddy to Nelly, to a lot of these artists, these concerts. But I actually got to exercise that comedy muscle. And I keep talking about the muscle because I believe in communication. The more you work at something, the stronger it gets. And to open up for a comedic genius, Kevin Hart, you know, I got to do like a cool 20 minutes opening up for him at the Spectrum Center in front of 18,000 people. Wow. And that was like one of the highlights of my career. And, you know, from the years of seeing him on the radio, I was totally comfortable in opening up for him because backstage he made me feel, you know, very, very comfortable. So to go out there and do jokes, it was easy. I was nervous at first because the crowd was so big, but it was easy. And hosting these live events eventually was able to land a job with the NBA team here in Charlotte, the Charlotte Hornets. And now 10 years in.
10 years, you've been hosting for 10 years.
I get to work alongside an amazing host in yourself, and eventually you became my wife. So, and it's still doing what I was doing at those live events, doing what I was doing on television, but really it was birthed from radio, being able to just talk.
Yeah.
And being authentically myself and having fun. If you're not having fun, then you're doing something wrong. Now it takes hard work. Sometimes you got to study lines. Sometimes you have to memorize things. But being authentically who you are, you know, was probably the best advice that I ever could receive. And when I became myself, I'm a people person. So I believe in this art form of communication. My true gift is an atmosphere changer.
I love that.
You know, whether it's a one-on-one connection with your listener, and here is going back to being that edgy person on the radio. One of my mentors in radio told me, have you touched your listener emotion today? Every day, try to spark an emotion, whether it's laughter, whether it's pulling on the heartstring and making them cry, or whether it's really saying something that's thought-provoking. Touch them emotionally. And if you don't do that, then you're not doing your job. And when he told me that, I was like, wow.
Yep.
It was a game changer for me because every day was my intention to really get to the heart of the person.
So you've heard it here. Fly Ty has really kind of taken a nosedive into sharing his story, his career journey with you. I want you to leave us with one thing, best piece of advice, and I kind of want to gear you to somewhere. What would you say to someone? Because one thing about this industry is you cannot be prepared for it. I think a lot of other industries, it's like years and years of school and years of practice, years and years of this. But a lot of times it's just trying to just be yes, and I'm available, and I'm going to do it scared, and I'm going to do it whatever. What piece of advice do you have for someone who's watching who's like, Fly Ty, I don't have anything. I'm not prepared, but I really want to do what you've done. What's that piece of advice you would give them?
Keep going. Keep going, because I received a lot of no's because I didn't have a communication degree, because some people told me he too country, he don't talk well, you don't have the voice. I received a lot of no's, but I kept going. If Be open to learning. I wanted to learn everything. That makes you valuable and irreplaceable. Be willing to learn, whether it's going to get that cup of coffee, running the audio equipment, or talking behind or in front of the microphone. Be willing to do anything. I wanted to say yes to it all. And you never know when the next opportunity may come. So honor the moment that you're in when you're in it. Meaning, put your best foot forward, because you never get a second chance for a first opportunity. So you want to make the most of that. You don't want to have any regrets at all. So that's probably the best piece of advice that I could, give someone that's listening right now. Never go into any situation putting a dollar sign on it, because a lot of opportunities will come from volunteering and doing something for free.
That's even how you got in the NBA.
That's how I got into the NBA. I volunteered to go host a basketball event. Yep. I got into radio because I volunteered to go up and entertain. I got into television because I volunteered to be, in front of the camera. So a lot of things came from me just saying yes to an opportunity that didn't pay anything, but I saw the big picture. All right? Don't worry about the moment you're in. Always look forward to the next moment.
There you have it, Fly Ty. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with
so
us.
Much.
You've heard his journey. Go and watch my journey, and then it's time for us to help you create yours. So make sure you tap yes and sign up for one of our media classes so you can learn. And we definitely want to walk alongside you in it. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.